general election.
Thanks. Well, the burning issue in Trafford this week has been the go-ahead for a new biomass incinerator, despite opposition from local people. But after a legal challenge, the High Court ruled the government acted lawfully in approving Peel Energy's plans for the wood-burning electricity plant. So where does that leave localism, the idea that decisions are taken closer to home? A question for Ewan Doak.
It mobilised the community.
Air pollution 70% over the EEC legal limit.
Residents opposing the building of an incinerator were backed by their council. But in the end, the High Court said the government was right to grant permission for the Barton renewable energy plant. None of the councillors on Trafford Council supported the building of the plant. The site's here on the banks of the Manchester Ship Canal, on Peel-owned land. On this side of the canal, Salford Council also opposed it. But the decision to build it was taken 200 miles away in London.
Local people's views have clearly been ignored. The vast majority of people I've spoken to in the area are opposed to this plant, and they believed that the government's promises about a localism agenda, that local people would have a say on local planning decisions that would affect their neighbourhoods and communities, they've been absolutely let down by that agenda.
The biomass incinerator will burn mainly waste wood, and the Environment Agency will monitor emissions. But opponents have dubbed it the smiling assassin and claim it will further damage air quality. Last week, the European Commission began legal proceedings over excessive pollution in Greater Manchester.
It's so devastating for the people that live here, and the impact that this will have on our lives, our health and our futures.
They argued decisions like this are stacked in favour of the developer.
The government is always going to go with the developers wherever possible. That's what they want to do under the new planning arrangements, and particularly if it's commercial development, industrial development or housing. If these decisions do go to the top, we can expect to see the Secretary of State rule in favour of the development.
Peel weren't available for interview, but said in a statement, "We now intend to focus our attention on completing the work necessary for the plant to be built." It's planned to open in 2016.
So, Andrew, was the government right to oppose local people and indeed the Tory-run Trafford Council?
I think there's always a difficult balancing act here, and I know Trafford Council fought this tooth and nail along with local residents and neighbouring councils, saying that this was the wrong place. You've got a situation, though, where you had the Environment Agency saying that this wouldn't damage health and it wouldn't damage air quality, and therefore it was always going to become something that was going to be settled in the courts. I think it's a regrettable decision. I'm not, a local MP to this area, but I can perfectly understand why residents opposed it, and councillors and local politicians.
Why do you say it's regrettable?
I just think you look at a development of this size, and not knowing the specifics, but just as you saw in the clip there, this is a very sizable development. This is something that has united people from different political parties against it. Therefore, there is clearly
so why did the government block local people then?
Well, there always, as I say, there is a balance with these things, and in the planning process you have to...
but the government got the balance wrong on this occasion,
well,
in your view?
You have to represent local people's views, but at the same time, when you're looking at infrastructure and you're looking at large projects of local and national importance, there is a balance to be struck, and this was one that, in the end, ended up in the courts. I'm not necessarily saying that I think the government got this one right. As an outsider looking in and looking at the details here, I think that the council had a very good case in arguing against it, but it seems that the courts and other officials have decided otherwise.
You're a big supporter of renewable energy, aren't you, Hazel?
Well, I had exactly the same situation in Monton in Eccles last year. A plan to build an incinerator, a massive biomass plant within 50 metres of people's houses. Local people were up in arms. We fought a 12-day planning inquiry. We had hardly any resources. The developer had a £1 million legal team, and after 12 days, you know what happened? The inspector found in our favour. It was an amazing decision. And, Andrew's being brave today, I think, on the show, because his government have made so much about localism, neighbourhood plans, local people making the decisions. And here in Trafford, you've got, the same as I had, a community up in arms, and they've been ignored.
But in the case of this one, Hazel, where the Environment Agency says that they're satisfied that there wouldn't be a risk to people's health, What do you do?
Well, that evidence is always controversial. We put forward evidence at our inquiry, including experts from Salford University, that the particulates in the emissions actually could be a danger to health. But our biggest case really was that local people didn't want it. And for once, the planning inspector, bless him, he went with local people. And in this case, the government actually have not listened to local people, in my view. And when you've got something like this, when people are living next door to it with their children and their families, I think you've got to go with the people.
OK, well, it's quite unusual, isn't it, that story? But thank you. Now, business rates are about as popular as